The Night He Came to Hogwarts by Benji the Vampire Confuser. Read by Ben Church. This is a work of fan fiction based on the works of J.K. Rowling and John Carpenter. No copyright infringement is intended, and no money is being made either from the story or from this recording. The only illumination in the vast, seemingly infinite chamber was that provided by their own wands and the dimly glowing orbs that lined the shelves. "Spread out," Lucius ordered. "The Dark Lord has sent his vision. I've no doubt the boy will make every attempt to arrive as soon as possible, to come to his dear godfather's rescue." The other Death Eaters laughed.
"He'd be insane as well as foolish to come alone," Bellatrix added, not unaware of the irony of that statement. "We need to know this place better than he does."
"Shouldn't take much," Goyle sniffed. "Most don't even know this department exists." "You certainly didn't," Lucius sneered. "Now get going, all of you." They spread out, marking the entrances and exits, which was not easy considering they tended to move. They investigated every chamber they could find, touching nothing, of course. None of them were foolish enough to do that. Except Crabbe. It was he who found and opened the chamber that held the man the Muggle authorities had been unable to contain, the one too dangerous even for Azkaban.
"Crabbe!"
Goyle whispered. "Damn you, you idiot, where have you gone?" There was no answer. He turned down one corridor between the shelves and another, but could not find his fellow servant of the Dark Lord. "Crabbe," he growled, "so help me, if you've gotten lost, you'll never live it down." A soft gurgle and a dull crack made him turn, and see Crabbe's body flung from concealment behind a turn and slide to a halt on the dark floor. Gaping, Goyle rushed to his side, brightening his wand to better investigate. His friend's head was twisted at an unnatural angle, obviously dead. "What the bloody—" Suddenly he was seized from behind, a scarred hand snatching his wand from his, and swiftly stabbed it point first deep into his right eye and into his brain. He was dead before he knew what had happened. Avery, Dolohov, and Jugson gazed somewhat greedily at the room they had found.
"These should be in Gringotts,"
Dolohov muttered.
"or they should at least have made this room harder to get into."
"Not supposed to be easy to get into the department in the first place," Jugson reminded him. Dolohov shrugged.
"Good point. In any case, I don't imagine we want Potter finding his way into here."
The room was filled with weapons. Some, like the Colt revolver capable of killing anything, were unrecognizable to the three wizards. Avery reached out to pick up a dagger that was forged to look like the spine of some kind of fish or serpent, but Dolohov grabbed his wrist.
"Touch nothing," he hissed. "That could be cursed or under some enchantment that only the worthy can pick it up."
"Or it could be the dagger of the Order of Dagon," Jugson shuddered, reading the label. He backed up. "We should leave before this place gets too tempting." He turned to go, only to find his path of egress blocked. In the shadows, it was hard to make out any specific features on the shape standing before him. That it was a man was unmistakable, but it stood so still, like a statue, hardly even seeming to breathe. "Who are you?" Jugson demanded, brandishing his wand threateningly. The figure finally moved, looking at the glowing tip of the wand, tilting its head curiously. Avery and Dolohov quickly joined him, adding their own light, revealing the dead, porcelain-white face of the figure before them. He was wearing a blue one-piece outfit, stained dark in several places, and a white mask topped with brown hair that covered his entire head. The only holes were those for his nostrils and his eyes, though in the dim light the eyes could not be seen.
"Answer him," Dolohov growled. "Who are you? What are you doing here?"
No answer. Instead, the shape seemed to ignore them, seeking out the contents of the room. "Perhaps it's some kind of golem?" Avery guessed.
"One way to find out. Sectum Sempra!"
Dolohov's curse lashed out and sliced into the figure's arm. The masked man looked as if in shock at the wound. Then the black eyes of the mask stared dead into his, chilling him.
"By the Dark Lord, he's hardly even—"
The man's scarred hand seized an axe from the wall, and with one fluid movement cut off all three of their heads. He looked around at the room again, now that the interruption had been taken care of. So many weapons to choose from. Finally his hand closed on a large knife, the kind one might expect to find in one's kitchen. "Oh dear," Rabastan said quietly, holding his wand up for Rodolphus to get a better look at the two prone bodies of Crab and Goyle. "You don't suppose that Potter—" "Don't be ridiculous. Potter couldn't have done this, even if he was powerful enough. He's weak." He removed his mask to get a better look. The light dimmed. "Damn it, Rabastan, hold the light!" He whirled to chastise his brother, but gasped in horror as hot blood splashed his face from the younger's slit throat. His attacker then shoved the dying boy to the side and advanced on Rodolphus, knife raised high. "Expelliarmus!" The knife went flying, and the Death Eater sneered as the shape looked at its hand in surprise. But the sneer died on his face as the now empty hand grabbed one of the globes and smashed it into Rodolphus's face. His screams as the broken glass was ground into his flesh echoed throughout the chamber and almost drowned out the voice of the prophecy, speaking about the curse of Arun and how the Myers line still lived. Blinded by the blood seeping into his eyes, crippled by pain, and having dropped his wand, he never saw the figure scoop his knife up from where it had fallen, but he still felt the blade as it was stabbed into his back again and again and again. The scream brought them all running, but due to the acoustics of the place no one was quite sure where to go. McNair mistakenly brought the entire shelf of prophecies down on Rookwood and Mulciber's heads when he mistook them for enemies in the dark, which was why he didn't see the brain's tendrils clutched in the figure's hands until it was too late. "Avada Kedavra!" It was not, with Bellatrix at his side, who finally brought the man down. The curse knocked him flying 5 feet back, where he landed limp and unmoving.
"Well done, Not," Bellatrix said, "though he might have been more useful in terms of information if you'd left him alive."
"Well, at least we can find out who he is," Not sniffed, striding forward and leaning down to remove the mask. The movement was so swift, Bellatrix could scarcely believe it had happened. The blade of the knife bit deep into Not's throat, up through his mouth and denting the inside of his skull. That alone might not have killed him, but the violent ripping as the blade was removed certainly did. As she watched, open-mouthed, the shape bent smoothly at the waist, and then turned to look at her.
"Stupefy!"
she shouted, but the curse had no effect. How was this possible? The killing curse was infallible, save for that one time. He rose and stalked casually towards her.
"Crucio!"
This time he stumbled back.
"Sectum Sempra!"
She slashed at his legs, and he stumbled back again.
"Reducto!"
One of his knees buckled, and she cackled. Then he threw his knife. It buried handle deep into her shoulder, and her entire arm went numb. Her wand fell from nerveless fingers as he began his pursuit once more. Gasping, she pulled the blade from her shoulder and turned to run.
"Help me!"
she called out. She didn't know where the others were, but surely there was someone left. Suddenly, someone grabbed her, and she screamed. "Get a hold of yourself, Bellatrix," Lucius snapped. "What's going on?"
"Someone opened one chamber too many," she spat. "They let something out. Not's dead. I don't know about the others. Lucius, look out!"
But her warning came too late, as the knife she'd dropped earlier was embedded in his back, and the shape lifted the man off his feet with it. Blood poured from Malfoy's mouth as he gasped in shock and began to twitch. Howling, she threw herself forward, knocking killer and victim alike into the shelves, sending prophecies showering down upon them. Once more she turned to run, but a hand closed on her ankle with an iron grip, and she felt herself pulled back. Her eyes fixed on the upraised knife, and she began to laugh. Because if this thing could take out the Death Eaters, she only wished she could live to see what it did to Potter. End of The Night He Came to Hogwarts by Benji the Vampire Confuser. If you have a work of fan fiction that you would like recorded for you, simply let me know. I ask only that if you enjoy it, tell your friends.